Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to make these pumpkin tuiles. So tuiles are basically very thin cookies rolled into a thin cylinder. And the orange ones are pumpkin, the purple ones are actually purple sweet potato. And these ones do require some special equipment and special ingredients. I'll have the links in the description box below to let you know where to find them. And if you can't find these ingredients or tools, I'll also give you some substitutions. So if you're interested in making these, then please watch on. For the ingredients, you'll need 60 grams of unsalted butter at room temperature, 60 grams of icing sugar, also called confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar, 50 grams of barley flour. I like using barley flour because it has a bit more fiber, but it also has a lower gluten content compared to all-purpose flour. You can also use cake flour or pastry flour. You can also use all-purpose flour if you can't find any of those other ones. 60 grams of egg whites, that's about 2 egg whites, 1 gram of salt, 5 grams of vanilla extract, so about a teaspoon, 5 grams of milk powder, 5 grams of pumpkin powder, and 5 grams of purple sweet potato powder. You can use any other powdered flavorings if you don't have these two, so the ones that are easier to find are like matcha powder, cocoa powder, or black sesame powder, and plastic tuile stencils, so I'll have a link in the description box below, and optional for dipping dark chocolate. The first step, stir the room temperature butter to make sure it's free of lumps. And I'll let you know a little secret, mine wasn't at room temperature and I just tried to melt it in the microwave and that's why there's so many lumps. So make sure it's at room temperature. And then add in the icing sugar and continue to stir again until it's free of lumps. You can tell I'm starting out really gingerly just because I don't want icing sugar flying everywhere. But once all the sugar has incorporated into the butter, you can stir a bit more vigorously. So as you can see, all the sugar has been melted into the butter and that's why I can stir it a bit more vigorously. And this helps to create small air bubbles in the cookies to improve the texture. Add the vanilla extract and the salt. I just eyeballed the salt and the vanilla and then stir to combine. Once you're satisfied that everything is mixed together, add the egg whites and try to stir. And because egg white is water-based, they won't mix together very well, but just try to make the islands of butter as small as you can. Once you add the flour, it'll turn into one smooth mixture. Okay, so I've tried my best to mix the egg whites and the butter together, and now I'm going to work on the flour mixture. So I'm just adding the milk powder to the flour and then sifting the two over the butter mixture. Now in general, I try to skip sifting when at all possible, but in this case, sifting does remove the lumps, and it is important to remove the lumps in this batter just because it's more of a thin batter and the lumps are really going to affect the texture, so it's definitely worthwhile sifting here. Now just simply stir until you have a smooth batter. Now at this point, because I'm making two flavors, I'm going to split the batter in half by weight. Of course, if you're only making one flavor, you don't have to split it in half. So to half of it, I'm going to add the pumpkin powder, and then the other half I'll add the purple sweet potato powder. Alternatively, if you're only making one flavor, you can of course add this when you're adding the milk powder to the flour mixture. And if you're just making plain cookies, then instead of adding the 5 grams of pumpkin powder, you would add 5 grams more of flour. And I'll write the measurements for plain cookies also in the description box below so that there's no confusion. And for the purple sweet potato powder, it tends to be a bit harder to mix thoroughly into the batter. It has to sit for a while before the color blends in. And before it blends in, you just see purple specks and it'll be a little bit lumpy. So to prevent the lumps, I'm just mixing the powder into a small part of the batter, and then I'm going to mix that part of the batter into the rest of the batter. And this is to prevent lumps and uneven mixing. Once you finish stirring the batter, you can place the batter into the fridge to rest for 10 to 20 minutes. In the meantime, preheat the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit or 160 degrees Celsius. So we're ready to spread the cookies once they've chilled. You do need, or I strongly recommend, a silicone or Teflon liners to bake these cookies. You want something that's non-stick, easy to remove, but you don't want parchment paper because it'll wrinkle. And because these cookies are so thin, any wrinkling makes the bake uneven. So spread a thin layer using your stencil as a guide. My stencil is about 1 millimeter thick. And just because the batter has been chilled, it's a little bit stiff. You don't need to re-chill it again. If the batter softens, that's good. It'll make it easier to spread. And spreading these is actually so therapeutic, kind of like applying plaster. Not that I know anything about that. So take your time spreading the cookies, making sure it's even and not too thick. And once you're finished, carefully remove the stencil so that you don't disturb the sides of the cookie. And then continue to spread the rest of the cookies. Continue spreading the rest of the batter until you filled up the whole baking sheet, and then do the same with the purple sweet potato cookies. These cookies bake for 8 to 12 minutes, but you'll have to play around with the time. You want a cookie that's crisp when it's cooled down, but no browning on the edges. And then when the cookies are hot out of the oven, you want to roll them around a cylindrical object, like a chopstick or 2 chopsticks, or the handle of a wooden spoon. Because you have to work with these hot, you can use gloves to protect your hands against the heat. Use light pressures only to wrap the cookies. This prevents cracking the cookie and also prevents burning your hand. If the cookies cool and become brittle, you can put them back in the oven for about 30 seconds or so and they'll soften up. If the cookies cool and they stay pliable, then you return them to the oven for 2 to 5 minutes just to give them another chance to continue cooking. So it takes a bit of time and practice. You don't have to roll these cookies up. They're really nice being thin and crisp wafers as well. So it's up to you, and depending on how much time you have, I'm sure they'll taste good either way. So I've decided to dip half of these cookies in chocolate. You can do that, it's an optional step if you want to do that. And yeah, so this is how they turned out. They're pretty cute, kind of restricted in size by the size of the stencil, but small ones are cuter anyway. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to comment or ask questions. And if you like what you're seeing, then you can consider following me on Instagram or subscribing to this channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.